This conference will now be recorded.
So in last session, we discussed about the architecture, the client server architecture. So R1 system, actually SAP used R1 system in olden days. SAP used R1 system, R2 system, and nowadays the companies are using, the organizations are using R3 system because of some disadvantages in R1 system and R2 system. For overcome of those disadvantages, SAP finally released in 1992. SAP released one effective system, that is R3 client server R3 system. So that is released in 1992. So that's why we have a password. So one of the user password is 06071992. That is date, month, year of SAP R3 introduced. So here we have three separate systems. So R and 3. So R stands for real time running organization having three systems. Okay, and here presentation layer, and this is application layer, and finally this is database layer. So we have three separate systems. So this is first system, this is second system, so this is third system. So presentation layer, already we discussed presentation layer, nothing but SAP GUI. And SAP application layer, SAP server, okay, ECC, CRM, SRM, SCM, like this. And database layer, SAP recommended database is Oracle database, but I'm not sure. So all companies are using only Oracle database because of depends on the organization requirement. They can use SAP. Why SAP recommended Oracle database means the main thing is high availability is there. There is no downtime. So that's why SAP recommended database is Oracle database. But actually SAP also having one inbuilt database is there, MaxDB, but compare with the performance, Oracle DB, MaxDB performance is very weak. Okay, so SAP recommended database is Oracle DB. Okay, so this is R3 system, so which is released in 1992, 0607 1992. So actually that is one of the user password 0607 1992. Okay. So we'll discuss. So this is very important because of, for example, if we go with as a fresher, SAP basis fresher, so compulsory we face this interview question, R3 client server architecture. Okay, so from presentation layer, so there is only GUI that is installed at user side. Already we discussed this point in the last session. SAP GUI can able to install any operating system. Okay, and SAP application layer, this should be installed on server related operating systems, like if you take Windows, the Microsoft flavors like Windows 2003 server, Windows 2008 server, 2012 server, like this we need to install on server related operating systems only.
Don't know who.
This conference will now be recorded.
Yes, this is R3 client server architecture. So you can observe here SAP application layer. So compare with the presentation layer, application layer, we have so many components are there. So presentation layer, this is nothing but a GUI. This is installed at user side. So if you go, so even if you take your in organizations also, the presentation layer. So we have only GUI. So we have only GUI, one application layer, one database layer. So GUI can able to install on multiple operating systems. Okay. So presentation layer is installed at user side. Okay. And here you can observe here presentation. This is a presentation layer. In presentation layer, once we log into SAP through presentation layer by using user ID password, okay, we can send the number of requests. Those requests are processed in application layer only. After process the user request, finally the data will be stored in database layer only. Okay, and here, so first we'll discuss about the R3 client server architecture. So here, whenever we send once we log into SAP, so whenever we send the request, so already we discussed whenever we send the request from presentation layer. So see here, I will show you. So this is SAP logon pad. This is also called as SAP GUI as well as SAP logon pad. So we have different versions are there. So this is 720 version. So present to 740, 750 also there. So this is the present we are using 720 SAP logon pad. Through this logon pad only, we can able to log into SAP. Okay, and here we need to select the application server. So we have different application servers, and logon pad is only one different application servers. See here. So these are the IP addresses. Okay, so I will show you. So here we need to enter the user ID password, which is given by the organization. This is the initial screen. This is initial screen. Once we log into SAP, this is the initial screen. So here we need to enter the T codes. So as a basis consultant, in our entire career, we are using only transaction codes. So we should not use any we should not create any programs. We should not write any SQL statements. Okay, so we should use only T codes which are developed earlier. Okay, and see here, I'm going to enter one T code, that is SU01. So what is SU01? We will discuss in our further sessions. I'm going to enter here SU01. We got one application, we got a window. In this window, enter the username. some, like for example Manoj. Click on create. Okay, already existing Manoj Kumar. Just click on create. So we got one more window. In this window, we need to enter the title, last name, first name, academic title, and function, department, room number, and floor, building, language, mobile, fax. So we need to enter the details. Once we enter the details, whenever we click on save, the details are goes to application layer for further processing. So see here. So from presentation layer, we send the request. From presentation layer, we send the request. Okay, not only one presentation layer, already we discussed. So number of requests are comes from number of GUIs. So only one application layer, different presentation layers. So many users are using SAP. Okay, but only one application layer. So whenever we send a request, the request is goes to dispatcher. So dispatcher is introduced in R3 system only. So in R1 system, R2 system, there is no dispatcher. So in R3 system, dispatcher is there. So dispatcher is look like a queue mechanism. What are the requests comes from presentation layer? Dispatcher receives each and every request. Dispatcher receives and insert into dispatcher queue. So this is a dispatcher queue actually. So this is a dispatcher queue. This is a dispatcher queue. So what are the request comes from a presentation layer? Each and every request received by dispatcher and insert into dispatcher queue in the form of FIFO. So first in, first out format. Every request should be stored in dispatcher queue. Next, dispatcher looking for work process. So work process, what is work process? We'll discuss in our coming sessions. So this is playing a major role in entire SAP application. So without work process, we can't able to log into SAP. So we'll discuss. And dispatcher looking for work process for process the user request. So dispatcher looking for available work process. So dispatcher, it receives each and every request received by dispatcher and insert into dispatcher queue in the form of first in first out. Next, dispatcher looking for work process. So see here. So this is dispatcher and this is queue. Okay, so see here, you observe here. So dispatcher having number of work process. Okay, we can't able to say this is a fixed number. So because the work process are decided by the system at the time of SAP installation based on the RAM size. So manually we can't able to assign, we can't able to create the work process. So totally depends on RAM, the RAM size. Work process are decided by the system. After installation only we can see so how many work processes are created. For example, if you are using 4 GB RAM, so maybe 12 or 16 number of work process. I'm not saying about the types of work process. Okay, so number of work process maybe 15 or 16. For example, so your friend using 8 GB RAM, maybe the number may be increased. So totally depends on the RAM size only. The work process are decided by the system. So we'll discuss in work process at the time of discuss about this work process. I will explain you. So see here. So according to this diagram, the dispatcher having four work process. So already we discussed dispatcher receives all the requests which are comes from this presentation layer and insert into dispatcher queue in the form of first in first out. So next to dispatcher looking for available work process for process the user request. So this is first work process, second work process, third and fourth. So we have number of work processes are there. So first dispatcher looking for the first work process. So dispatcher looking for first work process. If the work process, actually work process status are two types. So we have two types of status. Running, waiting. So here running means the work process already in process. So in processing some user request. Waiting means work process waiting for the work. So we have two types of status, running or waiting. So running means the work process already processing some user request, and waiting means work process is waiting for the work. So for example, if the first work process is running status, dispatcher looking for second work process because that is already processing some other work. That's why dispatcher looking for second work process. So if this work process also in running status, dispatcher looking for third work process. If the third work process also in running status, dispatcher looking for the fourth one. Okay. If the fourth work process is in wait status, the coming request is assigned to the coming request is assigned to this work process because this is in wait status means the work process is waiting for the work. So that's why a dispatcher assign the user request to that particular work process. Okay, so this is dispatcher activity, and after assign the work, what happened? I will explain you. After assign the work process, after assign the work to that particular work process, what happened? And see here, so this is one of the work process. This is one of the work process. You can observe here. So number of work processes are there. So we need to discuss about one particular work process. See here, in this work process, we have memory management. In left hand side, we have memory management, and right hand side, we have task handler and ABAP interpreter, SQL interpreter means a database interpreter, and a screen interpreter. Okay, so we have three types of interpreters, and right side task handler, and left side we have memory management. So once the request comes into the work process, first task handler it fetches the request from dispatcher queue. So from dispatcher queue, task handler. So this receives the request. Next, the memory. Each and every work process needs some memory for process the user request. Each and every work process it need minimum 75 to 150 MB. So minimum is 150 MB, 75 to 150 MB. So every work process need 150 MB for process the user request. That memory is assigned by this area, memory management area. Depends on the coming request. So depends on the coming request. It means, for example, some user requests are completed in 5 minutes, or some user requests are completed in 10 minutes. So in this case, it takes maximum the memory is 150 MB. But if we take like some client copies, local client copy, remote client copies, client export imports, in this scenario, it takes it need more memory. So depends on the requirement, the memory is assigned by the memory management. Okay, so this is memory management means the required memory is decided in this location only. So next, ABAP interpreter, SQL interpreter, and screen interpreter. Very important. What is ABAP interpreter? So for example, so one Indian and one Chinese candidate and one Chinese. Two candidates are there. They are talking about something, but the problem is, so whenever he says something, the Indian, he says something, he don't know because the Chinese, they don't know. For example, if you take the Indian, he's saying something in Hindi, Chinese, he don't know Hindi. So that's why what they decided, they are going to recruit one translator. The translator, so whenever the Indian he say something in Hindi, that is taken by translator and that is converted into Chinese language. Okay, so whenever he says something Indian, he says something that is converted into Chinese language. Okay, in the same way, I think the system can able to understood only zeros ones. The binary language can able to understood only zeros ones. But here, whenever we enter the T code, the T codes, the windows, every window is developed in ABAP. Already we discussed this point. So each and every window is developed in SAP. Each and every window is developed in ABAP language only. So whenever we enter the SU01 T code, that is behind of the T code we have program. Okay, so here whenever we enter the T code SU01, the T code is received by the translator and convert into system understandable language. Then only we got a window. So the everything is processed within fraction of seconds. So whenever we enter the T code SU01, that is received by the translator and convert into system understandable language. Finally, we got the window. So the fraction of seconds, so the entire process is processed. Okay, so this is ABAP interpreter. So ABAP interpreter is used for to convert ABAP source code into system understandable language. system understandable language. So that is, so whenever we enter the T code, the T codes are converted into system understandable language by using translator. That is nothing but ABAP interpreter. Interpreter nothing but translator, ABAP translator. Okay, so that is ABAP interpreter. So each and every T code is developed by ABAPers only. So please remember this point. Okay, so ABAP language that is not understood by the system because so system can able to understand only zeros ones. That's why ABAP interpreter convert the ABAP source code into system understandable language. Okay, so next to SQL interpreter means so that is a database interpreter actually. So database interpreter. So already we discussed at the time of SAP installation, we need to install the database also because of backend. So any database we can able to install. So for example, if you take Oracle database installed, so what the user requests are processed in application layer, those are stored in database layer. In this case, we need a connection from application layer to database layer. We need a connection. Okay. At the same time, SQL statements are not understood by the system. So select star from table name. That is not understood by the system. So that's why SQL interpreter is used to convert the database the structure query language into system understandable language. So database interpreter is used to convert the database queries into system understandable language. Next, screen interpreter. Screen interpreter is nothing but like, for example, if whenever we enter the T code SU01, so you can observe here, this is the window. So in this window, we have labels, we have some icons. So these are the icons, and we have some text boxes. Okay, and so we have some tabs. Okay, so whenever we entered SU01, the screen interpreter it convert. So what are the icons? What are the text boxes? What are the labels are in the screen? Those are converted into system understandable language. So already we discussed now. System can able to understand only binary language, zeros ones only. Okay, so that's why a screen interpreter is used for convert the screen having labels, text boxes, and tabs, icons. Those are converted into system understandable language. That is screen interpreter. Okay, so next user context. So this is also very important. User context. So user context means see here. So for example, in real time, once the work is assigned to you in real time, the window is look like not like this. So this is our personal system. Okay, for practice purpose, we are using this system. So that's why whenever we log into SAP, you can observe here SAP menu. SAP menu is there, but in real time, the window is look like a user menu for some like Kumar. User menu for Kumar. And the T codes, what are the T codes are assigned by the organization? Those are displayed under user menu for Kumar, like SU01 and SU10 and SEC4 and SEC5. Like this, what are the T codes are assigned by the organization? Those are displayed under user menu for Kumar. This is actually real-time window. So this is our own system now. So that's why it look like SAP menu. Okay. So in this case, for example, apart from 40 T codes, as a basis consultant, we have 40 T codes are there. Apart from 40 T codes, we can able to access these 4 T codes only until unless the organization assign some some more T codes. These are the T codes we can use in real time. So for example, whenever we enter the T code, that is, for example, SCCL, local client copy T code, that is not existing in this list. SCCL is not existing in this list. No? So that's why we got error message. You are not authorized to use this transaction code because there is no permission. So that is checked by user context. User context. So whenever we log into SAP, by using user ID password, very important. See here, whenever we log into SAP by using user ID password, automatically the structure is displayed. Like what are the T codes are assigned by the organization, those are displayed. Okay. So apart from the T codes, whenever we enter the T code is first checked by user context. The T code is existing in the user list or not. If the T code is existing, we can able to see the window. If the T code is not existing, we got error message, you are not authorized to use this T code. So user context is nothing but it is stored user related information like usernames and user transaction codes and their parameters, profiles, everything is stored in user context, nothing but user related information. Context, nothing but information. Okay, so that is user context. So each and everything means actually user context, nothing but that is authorizations check. Okay, so simply saying that is authorization check. And buffers, so this is also very important. So buffers are frequently accessed data. So what we are using, what we are accessed, the data, those are stored in buffers. So what is the meaning of frequently accessed? For example, at the first time after SAP installation, at the first time, whenever we enter the T code SU01, whenever we enter the T code SU01, it takes, means for display the window, it takes minimum 30 to 40 seconds because after SAP installation, the T code is first time we are using the T code. So that's why, sorry. So the request first, the work process checks the T code is existing or not in buffer. So that is not existing because that is the first T code after SAP installation we are using. So that's why the request goes to database and fetch the request. Fetch the T code SU01. Okay. So after fetch the request from database, one copy of SU01 is that is stored in buffer. Okay. And finally, after copy the T code in buffer, finally the request is goes to dispatcher. Dispatcher to user. This is a traveling. This is a journey. So whenever we enter the T code which is not used earlier, first that is checked in buffer. If the T code is not in buffer, the request goes to database and fetch the data. Okay, at the time of fetch the data, before send to user, one copy of the T code is copied in, stored in buffer. So finally the response is sent to user. So this is a journey. So second time, whenever we are using SU01, no need to go to database. The request already, the response is SU01 is already existing in buffer. No need to go to database. Okay, so every time whenever the request goes to database, this is a time taken process. So that's why no need to go to database. So directly fetch from buffers. So this is buffers. Okay, so that is buffer. So buffers are frequently accessed data. So if buffers are not there, every request goes to database. This is a time taken process. Okay, so for increase the performance, buffers are very useful. So this is about buffers. And finally, database. So database is used for to store the data and fetch the data. Database is used for to store the data and fetch the data. So what are the data? So what are the data is processed in application layer, those stored in database. So depends on the requirement. So for example, if I want to change something in the user profile, so in this case, the user profile is finally the user profile is stored in database. No? So if I want to change something in the user profile, so whenever I try to change the user profile, the data is fetched from database. Okay, so see here, for example, uh, if you take Manoj, I want to change something in the user profile. I want to change something in the user profile. Whenever we enter the username and click on change, automatically the user information is displayed. So whenever we click on change, automatically the profile at the time of user creation, what we entered the details, first name, last name, mobile number, mail ID, fax number, address, everything is going to be displayed. Yes, that is fetched from database only. So database is used for to store the data. For example, at the time of user creation, what we enter the details, those are stored in database. At the time of I want to change something in the user profile, that time the data is fetched from database. So database is used for store the data and fetch the data. Okay, and if you take the database having tables, each and everything should be stored in the form of tables wise only. So the data is stored in the form of tables. The table having rows and columns. Okay, so like this, data is stored in the form of tables. So for example, this is one of the table is T triple zero. What is T triple zero? We'll discuss. This is a T triple zero table, and this is a TST01 table, and this is USR02 table. Like this. So T triple zero table having some data, some client's information. TSC01 that is a request, so print request data. So we'll discuss later. And US202, so user information is stored in this table. So each and everything is stored in the form of table wise only. Every table having a unique name. Every table having a unique name. Okay. So database is used for to store the data and fetch the data only. Okay. So that's why you can observe here. So presentation layer only having the GUI, database layer only for storing the data and fetching the data, but the entire process is happened in application layer only. That's why we have in application layer we have dispatcher queue, work process. In work process also having memory management area, task handler area, and ABAP interpreter means ABAP converter, SQL converter means a database converter, and a screen converter, user context, and buffers. So the components are existing in application layer only. So this is about R3 client server architecture. So in our coming session, we'll discuss about the work process. Very important. Work process are heart of SAP application server. If the work process are not running, we can't able to log into SAP. So that's why the work process are playing a major role in entire SAP application server. Okay, so this is today's session. Uh, Tomorrow we'll discuss about the work process. First of all, what is work process and the types of work process and the number of work process. Types of work process are different, number of work process are different. So I will explain you the difference between the types of work process and number of work process in our coming session. So thank you.